What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 4 of Thoughtseize This, our podcast style recap episodes. So unfortunately, this is Monday at the time of recording. I was on the road most of the day yesterday, coming back from Atlanta, so didn't have time to record that episode. Little under the weather. Hopefully the voice isn't too raspy. But let's go ahead and jump into a little bit of our shout outs for the week, and then we'll get talking about how Atlanta went. I'm gonna have a separate recap video of Atlanta, going over all of my matches and things like that, so that'll be a little more in detail, but I'll just give a little bit of an overview here, whatnot. So starting off with our shout outs, let's go to our smaller screen. Bam. Venom won a standard challenge with Dimir mid-range. Looks like today's the 12th, so yesterday actually. Pretty stock-ish list. The really cool thing about Dimir in standard right now is there's a lot of room for flex spots. For example, running like the 4th Curiosity or for the 4th Kaito, or 4 of each or 3 of each. Phantom Interference versus Essence Scatter versus Spell Pierce, depending on what you want to target. Stab and Tragic Trajectory numbers. Your 2-drop removal suite has got a lot of flexibility with Bitter Triumph, Shoot the Sheriff, Strategic Betrayal, Nowhere to Run, all being viable in their own sort of rights. Even your creature space has got a lot of room. With Azure Beastbinder, Deep Cavern Bat, Flood Pits Drowner, Tidebinder, Preacher the Schism, Lord Skitter, Vren, Unagi of Kyoshi Island, just a whole bunch of... It's almost overwhelming the number of tools that you have access to, and it's just about coming up with the right configuration for what you're expecting to see. So Venom 1's list here, going with the 4 Curiosity instead of the 4 Kaito, maybe gearing towards wanting to have more of a flash speed presence, or wanting to be more in on that big explosive enduring curiosity turn with like Cecil, Spyglass, Deep Cavern, whatever, getting in, getting some damage, getting the draws off of that. We see a 1-1 split of Phantom Interference and Essence Scatter as the counter suite. Some people on 2 Interference. I've been personally a fan of 2 Essence Scatter, but the split gives you a lot of ability to have some interaction for things like Artist Talent, Monument to Endurance early, while the Essence Scatter is really good into like the Cub decks late for being able to hit an Ouroboros off the top, or a Warped Riddler or something that Interference could just be paid for. Got 2 2 Shoot the Sheriff, 3 Bitter Triumph, 1 Tragic Trajectory, 2 Stabs. So a lot of removal spells. The Stab's really good into the Cub decks, being able to kill like Llanowar Elves, the Gene Pollinator, the Spider Manifestation, the 2/2 red-green hybrid with Reach Guy. Really good to get off the board. It's also really good in the mirror, and stab a little bit better into the mono red decks, being able to fight like in response to, say, prowess triggers on Emberheart Challenger, or before your opponent goes to combat with a hasted up Hired Claw off a Rockface Village. Really cool in those spots. Mana base, pretty stock. Fountain Port, 2 Soul Stones, 2 Restless Reef, 5 Swamp, 4 Island, Multiversal Passage. The sideboard, we've got Annuls and Dresses, a Ghost Vacuum Soul Guide split, a Spell Pierce, another Stab, 2 0-point Ballad, a Negate, Strategic Betrayal Kaito, a Unagi of Kyoshi Island. Again, there is a lot of flexibility in the sideboard, but a lot of the choices seem to be fairly standard. I know that Venom 1's been doing really well in standard with Dimir mid-range, so really cool to see a challenge win there. Congrats to them. Second on the shout out list, we got Terminus 0 coming in with a challenge top 8 with Esper mid-range in Modern. So choosing to play Wan Shi Tong. I believe we've given Terminus a shout out before on the channel for doing really well in a few leagues and challenges with this Esper list they're working on. Pest Control's in the main, Purge, High Noon, Pest Control on the board, Fairy Time Reveler, Narset Parter of Veils. Like I mentioned, the Wan Shi Tong in the main deck. Really interesting configuration here. Again, it's a lot of stock pieces, but once you start organizing them in a way that makes more sense for the current meta, you can see that the results can very much follow off of that. So congrats for their top 8. We've got another top 8 challenge from Usunk. Again, playing Wan Shi Tong, but more in a dimir shell this time. So it's cool to see that Wan Shi Tong came out. The expectations were extraordinarily high. The card started getting played, and I believe that the expectations and the results, or the results didn't quite match the expectations, and opinion of the card has been like kind of falling like absolutely nosedive for a bit. But we are seeing it pop up in lists, which is really interesting because it is getting kind of that redemption arc. It's coming back in. It's showing that it does have a place potentially in Modern. I know we've got a local dimir player that's been really fond of the card and doing well. So excited to see the evolution of the Wan Shi Tong variants in the future. The rest of the list is a lot of, again, this is just stereotypical dimir. A lot of flex options, adjusted to fit play styles and what you're expected to see. Like this first build was on 4 Quantum Riddler, 4 Frog, 3 Bowman, 2 Subtlety. Usunk's list on Tamios, 3 Subtlety, 3 Quantum Riddler. Got the Kaitos, interactive suite, choosing a Bitter Triumph. Maybe wanted a little more ability to fight over planeswalkers, like opposing to Fairy Time Revelers, flip to Johnnies, things like that. We've got Strategic Betrayal in the main that I'm a huge fan of, especially into all the flages running around. The sideboard, we've got a Cut Down, which is really interesting. Great into the Boros decks if you want an extra spot removal spell for Guide, Pride, Ragavan, a Johnny early, or just an extra removal spell for like Voice of Victory. Then Cut Down's a really good option. Got 2 Dress Downs, Toxic Deluge, and Engineered Explosives as our sweeper effects. Another Cling to Dust. I'm a little underwhelmed typically with Cling to Dust coming out of the sideboard. I think like 1 or 2 in the main is perfectly reasonable because you can use it to replace itself if you're not in a matchup where the graveyard really matters. Once you see the first one, you don't really need a second one. And I don't think it's an impactful enough card coming out of the sideboard, especially when you've got a couple copies of Nihil Spellbomb here, plus the Cling to Dust in the main. I feel like that spot could probably be used for something a little bit stronger, but again, yeah. Sorry about that. Again, Usunk's the one that came in second place in the challenge, so I would defer to them for the choices on their own deck list before myself. And speaking of Wan Shi Tong, our last shout out, or second to last shout out, goes to Aspiring Spike for this dimir Flash variant that I know he's been working on and playing for a minute now, with no Psychic Frogs, but 4 Orcish Bowmaster, 4 Wan Shi Tong Librarian, and 4 Subtlety in the main deck. So all instant speed. We've got 3 Cling to Dust, 4 Fatal Push, 2 Spell Pierce, 3 Spell Snare, 4 Consult the Star Charts, 4 Counterspell, a Logic Knot, 3 Shieldred's Edict. So the entire deck is instant speed or has flash. Is instant speed, so everything can be played at instant speed. 4 Field of Ruins in the main to help out against some of these Tron decks, Amulet Titan, stuff like that. In the sideboard, we've got 3 Engineered Explosives, 4 Consigned Memory, a Force of Negation, 3 Graveyard Trespasser, 3 mystical dispute, 1 damnation. I do think it's kind of funny. I know Spike's not a fan of Kaito in Modern, and I do think it's kind of funny to see Graveyard Trespasser instead of Kaito. They're good in similar matchups, because like Graveyard Trespasser is really good against decks like Jeskai Blink, where you're able to interact with a Flage in the yard, and if your opponent wants to Solitude the Trespasser, they have to Solitude, usually pitch a card to evoke the Solitude and pay the ward, so it's often a 3-for-1 against Solitude. But Kaito typically just dodges Solitude altogether, as long as you can battle back against Flage somewhat. So they have very similar roles and matchups that they're good against. I personally still think that Kaito's got a little bit of an edge, especially in a deck like this, where you're running Bowmasters and Wanshi Tongs and Subtleties, and you can just flash one of those in, untap, ninjutsu in your Kaito, have your flash threat again if you want to Bowmaster ping again, or Subtlety another threat, or draw more off your Wanshi Tong. But again, Spike put the list together, has done extremely well with it. I would absolutely defer to him on any of the detailed choices there. But big shout out for always innovating into the modern space and putting together a list that I'm sure quite a lot of people will give a shot to over the upcoming weeks. So really cool to see there. And then the final shout out is to Linden Coot, who came in top 16 at the SCG Con Atlanta, the Spotlight series for Avatar: The Last Airbender. Again, with kind of a brood take on standard Dimir mid-range. So this is kind of a combination of the Dimir scam deck that's going around, with like Quantum Riddlers, Storm Chasers talent, Boomerang basics, but then combining that with a lot of really cool Dimir mid-range points, such as the 4 Kaito Bane of Nightmare, Unagi of Kyoshi Island, Cecil Dark Knight, Spyglass Siren. We got Strategic Betrayals in the main. So the idea here is, one, you get to like crush all the mirror matches out there, because Storm Chasers talent, Boomerang basics, is just absolutely nuts into any matchup that's trying to play fair. Having effectively a 2-card combo. If you don't play a lot of standard, play your Storm Chasers talent, make an Otter. Boomerang basics lets you pick up your own Storm Chasers talent plus draw a card to then replay your Storm Chasers talent, get some prowess triggers, get another Otter. But then Storm Chasers talent can be up to level 2, that allows it to rebuy the Boomerang basics from the graveyard to cast on your Storm Chasers talent, to pick it up and draw a card, reset the Storm Chasers talent when you play it, put the Boomerang basics back in the graveyard to be able to level up to 2 again, pick up the Boomerang basics, repeat the process. So you just get to absolutely flood the board with Otter tokens as the game goes along, which is really, really difficult for any sort of fair deck to fight over. You get access to the 4 copies of Kaito Bane of Nightmares that almost makes the control matchups a buy. Kaito is so good into a deck that can only answer it with typically Get Lost. But when you're running all of these other creatures, if your opponent decides to focus on that Get Lost on Kaito, it opens up for a really big swing with all of your Otter tokens, your Quantum Riddler, stuff like that. The 3 copies of Strategic Betrayal in the main, really good into the Lessons matchups. And then these like Get Outs into the Flood Mauls, Nowhere to Runs. Nowhere to Run Boomerang basics are really cool combo of cards to help fight over like the Cub decks, any of your aggressive creature strategies, by being able to take out a creature, pick up your Boomerang base, or pick up your Nowhere to Run with Boomerang basics, draw a card, replay the Nowhere to Run as another removal spell. Just really, really good card advantage over this entire list. Super cool to see. So big shout out to Lyndon for the finish. I did watch one of his later rounds in a dimir mid-range mirror and got to see a line of like Kaito and I think it was Kaito and some other, like a Quantum Riddler or Kaito and some other threat, staring down a Cecil, draw a Riddler for turn, cast the Riddler, draw a land and an Unagi of Kyoshi Island, get to play the land, like stun down, attack him with a Kaito. Next turn, draw another Riddler, and it's just like the insane amount of late game value and card advantage that this deck has access to. Highly recommend it for anybody that's looking for a cool dimir based brew to run through like the ranked arena ladder or try out at the next local event. So that's the end of our shout outs there. Let's get back a little bit to the rest of the overview for the end of the video. Hi there. So yeah, let's do a quick little recap of Atlanta. Got up there Friday, played in a a standard re-CQ Friday afternoon. Started off 2-0 with wins over Cub and Mono Red, I think, and then lost to a really cool Sultai Reanimator pivot. If you played against Sultai Reanimator in standard, you'll know that dimir has some really cool tools for the matchup. Not only cards like Soul Guide Lantern out of the sideboard, but Tishana's Tidebinder in the main, which I was on 4 copies of, does a lot of work into decks that are trying to fight like on ETB or on an ETB basis, which Kyvero out of the Sultai Reanimator deck is trying to do. Looking up the results of one of my teammates. So I'll find mine while I still talk. But the really cool pivot was that I had brought in all of like my Grave Hate and stuff for game 3, and my opponent had sideboarded out a lot of their Reanimator targets for Quantum Riddlers. So I'm sitting here with Soul Guide Lanterns, Tidebinders, and my opponent's going turn 2 Warp Quantum Riddler, turn 3 Awaken the Undead, turn 4 Warp another Quantum Riddler, turn 5 Hardcast a Quantum Riddler, and like a Tidebinder and stop one draw, but I don't think I can beat just a 4/6 hitting me in the face over and over again while I've got a couple 3/2s and like a Soul Guide Lantern and something else. And that opponent actually ended up doing very well. Let's see if I can find them. I know their name was John Johns. Yeah, 75th here with Sultai Reanimator. You can see like the Quantum Riddler main side. So yeah, they did really good with that list. Shout out to them as well. But I felt like pretty good with my list going into the main event on Saturday. I ended up 6-3. I started off kind of well. I won a dimir blink. This was like a dimir scam list round 1, running Quantum Riddler, Splash Portal, all of that stuff. So kind of like the Is It Prowess, Is It Scam list, but ported over to dimir. Won that one. Round 2, I've got to give a huge shout out here. I played against 2 members of Team Pillow Fort, which if you pay attention to anything on the stream, we have a fantastic player named Noe that shows up from time to time, who top 8'd RC Houston back a few months ago with Esper Gorio's Vengeance. Joined Team Pillow Fort, and I got to play against 2 of his teammates this weekend, who were genuinely 2 of the nicest people that I've ever met in my life. So big shout out to their team to everything they've got going on, because it seems like they got a really awesome culture being built over there. So if you're fortunate enough to talk to any of them, then take the time, do so, because they're absolutely entertaining people. But my round 2 opponent was Jonathan Johnson, who apparently is the head of Team Pillow Fort. Really awesome match. Little unfortunate game 2. I saw what was it, a Preacher of the Schism on the play with some removal spells, a Curiosity, and just couldn't find a Wrath effect. For the record, my list that I registered, let's go back to small form for a second. My list that I registered is on screen now. I'll have it in the description as well. But I was on 4 Wrath effects in the sideboard with 3 Day of Black Sun and a Rise of Sozin, mostly for the Simic Cub deck. I beat it once in the re-CQ. I was feeling pretty good about my sideboard plan there, and ran this first match into it. Didn't see the Wrath effect post board, and that kind of ended up biting me pretty hard. So just goes to show that even if you have a plan you feel is pretty good, sometimes it doesn't work out. But anyway, run into another Simic matchup round 3, win that one 2-1. Again, feeling good about the sideboard plan. Round 4, I saw another Dimir bounce opponent, but this one wasn't on Splash Portal and Quantum Riddler. This one was on Fear of Isolation, which I did not realize was return a non-land permanent as part of the casting cost. I definitely thought it was like an ETB. Didn't come up, but I thought it was an ETB. And we did end up having an interesting judge ruling here, or judge call. First off, again, really nice opponent. Opponent played a Legend of Kuruk. And let me pull up this card so you'll know what I'm talking about. Legend of Kuruk. All right. So this is Legend of Kuruk. Opponent played a Legend of Kuruk. I was in a position where I needed to push some pressure. It was game 3, I believe. Double check. I just accidentally. This. Excellent. Wait for my deck list. Find it eventually. It was game 3. Opponent plays Legend of Kuruk. I need to push the advantage. I've got a Tidebinder in hand. So I'm like, all right, opponent I think is empty-handed or has like 1 card in hand. I'm going to Tidebinder the Legend of Kuruk trigger. I don't want them drawing anything right now. So I Tidebinder, target the Legend of Kuruk trigger. Opponent goes to my turn. I've got like double Tidebinder and like a Cecil or something on board. Attacking in, trying to push across some damage into some otter tokens off of Storm Chaser's talent, and opponent blocks with their otter token, stays alive, goes to their turn, draws their card, passes through. I go to my turn, attack again, pass back to their turn. They draw, and they say, if I kill the Tidebinder, does the Legend of Kuruk trigger? So I thought if they kill the Tidebinder, the Legend of Kuruk triggers on the next opportunity for it to take up the chapter. The reason I thought this is I thought the Legend of Kuruk was a creature saga, just like all the Final Fantasy sagas. I did not realize that the Legend of Kuruk was not a creature saga because, let's see if I can explain this. Think of the image on screen upside down, and that's the direction I'm seeing the card from. So I see like the Legend of Kuruk, and then the first chapter ability, second chapter ability, third chapter ability, and then I see this little part here that says 4-3. My mouse isn't showing up, but you see right under chapter 3, it says 4-3. I stopped reading there. I did not read Enchantment Saga, so I didn't realize it didn't say like Enchantment Saga creature. I thought it was just like the Final Fantasy creature sagas. I thought that was the new design of sagas in standard. So I thought this was a vanilla 4-3 on the battlefield. And if they attacked or if they killed my Tidebinder, say on their main phase, then the next main phase of theirs, it would tick up to the next chapter as if the Tidebinder wasn't applying to it anymore. So that's what I told my opponent is I think that if you kill the Tidebinder, it doesn't just automatically trigger right now. The next time it would trigger, it ticks up. And my opponent goes, okay, I want to call a judge. Sure, yeah, let's bring a judge over. So the judge comes over. Judge looks at Legend of Kuruk, asks us what happened. I said, they played the Legend of Kuruk. I played Tidebinder, targeted the triggered ability. They passed to my turn. I attacked, went to their turn. They didn't do anything relevant. Passed back to my turn. I attacked again, passed to their turn. They asked the question. So there was a full turn cycle that intervened here. The judge said, well, the Legend of Kuruk doesn't lose its abilities. And both of us were kind of in the wait, what mode? Like, so my opponent thought that the Legend of Kuruk lost the abilities because Tidebinder removed all of the abilities from everything, like artifact, creature, enchantment, planeswalker, whatever. They didn't realize that Tidebinder didn't affect enchantments. I thought it removed the abilities because Legend of Kuruk was a creature. Both of us are idiots, apparently. We both got a game rule violation, which is extremely understandable. Like, I should have recognized that it was an enchantment creature. Opponent should have known that Tidebinder doesn't affect enchantments. We're both in the wrong there. I 100% admit that I did not read everything about this card as I should have. I just stopped at the 4-3 part. So judge said that we could not rewind back to a point where the Legend of Kuruk should get the second trigger. We'd passed that. We thought that maybe we could just, like, since we agreed on the turn transfer, we thought we could just skip to chapter 3 with it flipping over since it should be on chapter 3 right now. Judge said that we couldn't do that. We had to just put chapter 2 on the stack and start from there. I don't know if that's the correct judge ruling or what, since like we agreed on where it theoretically should be. I would think it would be a situation of like chapter 2 counts as a missed trigger. Now we're on chapter 3 and we're flipping it, but not my ruling to know. I don't think that it ended up affecting the game. I want to say I had some good stuff in hand. It was okay. But it is a really weird situation, and it shows where formatting of cards changing between sets is really awkward to keep up with, because I was so locked into that like Blood Moon Urza's Saga line of, okay, it removes all abilities of, or your humility effects removes all the abilities of sagas that are creatures. So they made that rules change so they could print saga creatures, but now they're back to non-creature sagas. And that's my inexperience with the set coming through very, very well. But that was weird judge call round 4. Round 5, back into another Simic Ouroboros matchup. Won that one pretty well. Another member of Team Pillow Fort, Jacob, shout out to them, super nice as well. Round 6 against Craig on Golgari mid-range, had really unfortunate draws on his part. Like game 1, he was on like a Golgari landfall deck. Game 1 just saw like no landfall payoffs. Game 2 kept a 2-lander, didn't see a third. So got through that one. Round 7, Chris Dennis, dimir mid-range mirror. Really fun player to play against. Really nice guy. I also think had like a top 32 finish or somewhere around there. So shout out to them. It was just one of those matches of like, I think Chris drew a little bit hotter than me. Like had a man land when I didn't have a man land, had second man land when I had the first man land. Was able to get Kaito down, I think our game 2 or something. I didn't. Just happens in the mirror. Round 8, Ari on Is It Prowess. I got absolutely dumpstered this round. So he was on a build of Is It Prowess that was more in on Drake Catcher with like ops and Storm Chaser talent and whatnot. So really, really wide board very quickly. And absolutely like ran me over. So cool list there. I sat next to him a couple rounds later on and meant to say hey, but I didn't. But at this point I was 5-3 going into the last round of day 1. Needed a win to stay alive. Sat down for my round 9 opponent, or sat down for my round 9 match. My opponent wins the die roll, goes turn 1 Meticulous Archive, Surveil Pass. And I'm like, oh, thank God. It's Jeskai control. This is one of my best matchups. Game 1, Kaito, like I think I see triple Kaito or something. And I'm able to get across the finish line with that. He's got like Get Lost for the first one, double Lightning Helix for the second, but the third just goes unanswered. Game 2, he's got a Voice of Victory on the play, which if you've seen any of the standard streams, you know that's like the only card I lose to out of Jeskai control. I did deal with the Voice fairly early, but he was able to start getting stock ups and consult the star charts chained together and pulled away on the card advantage side. I tried to keep playing that game so I could get any information I could about sideboarding, and found out that he did have like Beza, he had Unagi of Kyoshi Island, the Voice of Victories, Tide Binders. He went like the full all-in creature sideboard plan. So game 3, I was able to pivot my sideboarding a little bit, keep in some interaction, and I believe I got down like an early Kaito again that just kind of ran away with it. So glad to see that matchup in my winning in for day 2. Started off day 2 on the Simic Ouroboros matchup, won that one 2-0. Really, again, nice opponent. Just happened to see all of the really good stuff that I put in my sideboard. Round 11, I got my first match into Lessons and got variance dumpstered and matchup dumpstered. So I had to mold a 5, I think, both games 1 and 2. And opponent had really good hands, like on the play, Grand into Talent into Monument game 1, Game 2, I kept a hand with like double a null to try to keep ahead of the artist talent. They had turn 1 Grand. I got down a Kaito on turn 3. They resolved an artist talent as soon as I tapped out. And then I started trying to get pressure with Kaito, but they had like boomerang basics for Kaito. Replayed Kaito the next turn. Boomerang basics it again. Replay it like 2 turns later. Boomerang basics it again. I'm like, all right, yeah. Can't do much about that. Rounds 12, 13, and 14. I got 3 straight mono red matchups, which was kind of wild because I didn't see that matchup day 1 at all. Then day 2, see 3 straight. The first one, Andrew, really nice opponent, was not running any copies of Nova Hellkites or any exile effects for Curiosity, which I took note of. So if you didn't know, day 1 of the Spotlight series is closed deck list. Day 2 is open. So got to see my opponent's deck list before the match, saw that they weren't on any copies of exile effects for Curiosity or any copies of Nova Hellkites. So not having to worry about that, getting to jam a Kaito early, not worry about it getting just like haste killed by a dragon is a really big advantage. And knowing that my 1-drops are safe, or knowing that my Spyglass Sirens and my bats and stuff aren't going to be taken out by like Hellkite is a really big deal. So won that one. Round 13 against Patrick. Another extremely friendly opponent, spoke to me the round before, said that he watched some of my content, so really appreciated that. Super nice. It might have been 2 rounds before, but we joked about, well, maybe we'll play each other later on, and we ended up getting paired together. So we sat down for this one, recognized each other, had a little chat there. Started the match. Patrick mulled to 5, I think, game 1 on the play. And I just had like a removal into good threat into like Curiosity or Kaito start. Like one of those really good dimir starts in general, but even better when your opponent's on a mull to 5. So ended up getting that one. Game 2, we get later into the game. I've got a pretty stacked hand, and opponent goes to cast a Emberheart Challenger. So I look at the Emberheart Challenger for a second. I put my hand on my head and I go, Emberheart Challenger. Like, that's what I do. Put my hand on my head, go Emberheart Challenger. About 3 or 4 seconds pass, and my opponent says, pass the turn. And I think immediately, or I think I say like, hold on, I'm still thinking on Emberheart Challenger. And then I realize that my opponent saying pass the turn has put all of these implications in my head of like, doesn't have anything else, isn't intending to attack, and I've gained additional information. So I call a judge on myself. I tell my opponent, like, I need to call a judge on myself. I think that I just gained like additional information. I want to make sure I'm not gonna like doing anything scummy here. So the judge comes over, tell him what happened, and the judge kind of looks like, so what's the problem? And we're like, I don't know how to feel about this spot, because based off what my opponent just said, I think my play just completely changes, but it shouldn't be that way because the Emberheart Challenger should still be on the stack and I should still be thinking about my lines. So the judge rules that we are still, since I didn't give any sort of verbal indicator that the Emberheart Challenger had resolved and my opponent hadn't clarified that it had resolved, then we were back at the point with Emberheart Challenger still on the stack, and it was my opponent's priority with Emberheart Challenger on the stack. They chose to pass priority. I made my play. We went and spoke to the head judge afterwards for a little bit of clarification, just to try to get an idea of like what's the okay on verbal versus non-verbal, like priority passing, time constraints, anything like that. And the judge had some really good points on it, effectively, that the time doesn't matter. If nobody clarifies, priority is not passed. There is no assuming of priority passing. I could sit there and tank for as long as I wanted. I could get a slow play warning, obviously, but there is no assumed priority in those spots. But the reason this mattered so much is when my opponent played the Emberheart Challenger, I had an Essence Scatter and a Tide Binder in hand. They had not gone to combat yet with a Hired Claw on board, like a Hired Claw and a Needlehead or something like that. If they went to combat, I wanted to Tide Binder the Needle or the Hired Claw trigger. And if they just played the Emberheart and decided to go to combat and attack, I'd want to Hired Claw or Tide Binder the Hired Claw trigger, block the Emberheart, and then block the Hired Claw with another like 1 or 2/2, so that the Hired Claw couldn't grow after the trigger, and I'd get to take out like 2 threats there. But if they were just going to play the Emberheart and pass, then I wanted to Essence Scatter the Emberheart and save my Tide Binder, since they weren't going to be going to combat. But if they were going to play the Emberheart and attack, then I might want to Tide Binder and not and save my Essence Scatter. So as soon as they say pass, I know, okay, well, they're not going to go to combat, so I need to Essence Scatter and not use my Tide, or not wait for my Tide Binder. And so that just completely threw that line kind of out the window. Anyway, again, Patrick, super nice opponent. The confusing element of that was absolutely wild. I'll do a bigger breakdown of it in my recap video of the entire weekend, or of all the matches. But anyway, let's keep going. Round 14, another mono red. I can't remember. I think I was on the draw game 1 on a mull to 5. Opponent saw a good hand, ran me over. Game 2, I made a really big misplay. Well, got a little mana screwed. I boarded out a bunch of my 4 drops and proceeded to draw the remaining ones in the first 3 draw steps. But I made a mistake in thinking that the Sunspine Lynx was a 5/3, not a 5/4. And I attacked into it with a Tide Binder, and he just got the free block on it there. So really big mental punt on my part. And then the last round against Luis, we looked at the standings, trying to figure out if either one of us were live for top 64. Ended up deciding, I think we were 91st-ish going into the last round. Decided that we were both probably dead for top 64, but we could draw and lock up top 128 to get the Day of Black Sun promo. So we ended up drawing, I made top 128. I believe Luis did too. I'm gonna feel really, really bad if he didn't. Come to think of it, I don't think I ever checked. So let's do that live now. So I ended up around 84th. Yeah, Luis made 80th. So we both ended up top 30 or top 128 there. Both got promos. All good. We survived to Magic another day. And we played it out for fun. Again, I wanted to make sure my sideboard was good for the Simic matchup. I ended up winning 2-0 pretty handedly. Saw a lot of good cards at the right time. Able to clinch it up there. So really cool matchups for the weekend. I was really happy with how the list performed, and I am more excited for Spell Snare coming up in Lorwyn in a couple weeks. Having access to an on the draw answer to like the Cub or artist talent, stuff like that, is going to be absolutely huge. So that's all I got for you for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed listening in. As always, let me know if you got any results you want me to give a shout out for in next week's episode. If anything exciting's going on, if you got lists you want to try, feel free to link it down below. Other than that, come join the Discord. Come say hey. Love to talk to you about all things modern or standard related to Dimir. We'll have a challenge coming up this week on stream. Got a few live streams planned. So yeah, exciting time to be a Dimir pilot. Other than that, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.